I never thought my own parents would hold a gun to my head, but that Tuesday morning over scrambled eggs and burnt toast, they might as well have pulled the trigger. The words hit me like a freight train, barreling through my chest, either become my pregnant sister's live-in nanny for free or watch my rent triple from $500 to $1,500 a month. The casual way my mother Patricia delivered this ultimatum while buttering her toast made my stomach lurch. My father Robert nodded along, avoiding eye contact as he sipped his coffee. Emma, my 25-year-old sister, sat there with her hand protectively over her barely showing belly, smirking like she'd already won some twisted lottery. At 28, working 2 jobs just to afford living in my childhood bedroom, I realized this wasn't about family duty or helping with a new baby. This was financial blackmail, wrapped in a bow of manipulated guilt, and they expected me to smile and say thank you. The next morning, I discovered just how deep this rabbit hole went when I heard muffled voices coming from the kitchen. Creeping down the hallway in my bare feet, I pressed my ear against the partially open door and felt my world tilt sideways. Patricia was on the phone with someone, her voice animated with excitement. "Oh yes, we've got it all figured out. Louise will handle everything once the baby arrives. She's so good with children, and it'll save Emma and Derek thousands on daycare costs." My blood turned to ice as I realized she was talking to Emma's boyfriend, Derek's wealthy parents. "We've already discussed it with Louise, and she's completely on board with helping family." The lie hit me like a slap across the face. I hadn't agreed to anything. In fact, I'd spent the entire night tossing and turning, trying to figure out how to escape their impossible demand. But here was my mother, already spinning stories to Derek's family about my supposed willingness to sacrifice my life for unpaid childcare duties. Robert's voice joined the conversation as he entered the kitchen. "The arrangement works perfectly for everyone. Louise has been living here rent-free anyway." Another lie. I'd been paying $500 every month for 3 years. Money I earned through early morning shifts at the coffee shop and weekend hours at the department store. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. Moving quietly up the stairs, I grabbed my phone and called my coworker Sarah during her lunch break. "Sarah, I need an outside perspective here," I whispered, explaining the entire situation while hiding in my bedroom closet. "Louise, that's not family helping family. That's exploitation." Sarah's voice was firm through the phone. "You're 28 years old with your own life and career goals. They can't just decide you're going to be an unpaid servant." But when I came downstairs for dinner that evening, the manipulation escalated to a whole new level. Derek had arrived slouching in his usual spot at our kitchen table like he owned the place. His sandy hair hung in his eyes, and he wore the same wrinkled shirt I'd seen him in for the past 3 days. The guy hadn't held a steady job in over a year, despite having a college degree in business administration. Emma rubbed her stomach dramatically as she spoke. "Louise, Derek's parents are so excited about our arrangement. They've already started shopping for baby clothes because they know childcare costs won't be an issue." The weight of their manipulation settled on my shoulders like a concrete blanket. Not only had they lied to Derek's family about my agreement, but they'd apparently used this promise to secure financial support from his well-off parents. I was being traded like livestock my future bartered away without my consent. "I never agreed to be anyone's nanny," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. Patricia's face immediately hardened. "Louise, we need to discuss your attitude. This family has supported you for years, and now it's time for you to give back. I pay rent every month." I reminded her, pulling out my phone to show the electronic transfer records. $500 barely covers utilities, Robert interjected, though I'd seen him deposit my checks plenty of times. A real apartment would cost you twice that much, and you know it. Derek spoke up for the first time, his voice lazy and entitled. Emma needs family support right now. It's not like you have anything else important going on. The dismissal in his tone made my teeth clench. Nothing important going on except working 60 hours a week to build a life for myself, saving money for my own apartment, and taking night classes to finish my marketing degree. Besides, Emma added with fake sweetness, it'll be good practice for when you have your own kids someday. The assumption that I'd want children, that my entire life should revolve around other people's reproductive choices, pushed me closer to the breaking point. But I kept quiet already, forming the beginning of a plan in my mind. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Derek's loud television shows coming through the thin walls. He'd been living here rent-free for 8 months, treating our home like his personal hotel, while I worked myself to exhaustion just to afford a bedroom. The unfairness of it all made my chest tight with anger. By morning, I'd made a decision. If my family wanted to treat me like property to be negotiated and traded, I'd show them exactly how much they depended on that property. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of their deception. I spent my lunch break at the coffee shop, researching fair market rates for childcare in our area. Professional nannies earned between $15 and $20 per hour, and live-in arrangements typically included room board and additional compensation for the lack of personal space and freedom. Armed with this information, I decided to approach my family with a reasonable compromise. That evening, I sat down at our kitchen table with a printed proposal outlining my terms: part-time childcare assistance for $12 per hour, with clear boundaries about my availability and responsibilities. I'd help with the baby during specific hours while maintaining my current jobs and continuing my education. This is ridiculous, Patricia snapped before I'd even finished reading the first paragraph. You want to charge your own family for helping with your nephew or niece? It's not charging, I explained patiently. It's fair compensation for professional services. I researched market rates and I'm actually offering below average pricing. Emma's face flushed red with indignation. I can't believe how selfish you're being. After everything this family has done for you, you want to profit off my baby. What exactly has this family done for me? The question slipped out before I could stop it, surprising everyone, including myself. Robert leaned forward, his voice taking on that stern, parental tone he'd used when I was 12. We've provided you with housing, food, and support for years. We could have asked you to move out when you turned 18, but we didn't. I've been paying rent and buying my own groceries since I was 25, I reminded him. And before that, I was in college working part-time to cover my expenses. Derek laughed from his spot on the couch, not even bothering to look away from his video game. Come on, Louise, it's just babysitting. How hard can it be? The casual dismissal of childcare as just babysitting revealed everything I needed to know about Derek's attitude toward parenting responsibilities. This guy expected to dump all the actual work onto someone else while taking credit for being a father. Emma stood up dramatically, one hand on her back, like the pregnancy was already causing her significant discomfort at just 10 weeks along. I guess I know where I stand with my own sister. When I needed family support the most, you decided to treat me like a business transaction. That's not what this is about, I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the frustration building in my chest. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. I want to help, but I also need to maintain my own life and goals. Your goals. Patricia's voice dripped with sarcasm. Like what, Louise? You're 28 years old, still living at home, jumping between part-time jobs. Maybe it's time to accept that this is your purpose in life." The words hit me like a physical blow. My own mother, the woman who'd supposedly supported my dreams, was telling me my highest aspiration should be unpaid domestic labor for my sister's family. Every sacrifice I'd made, every extra shift I'd worked, every night class I'd attended, dismissed as meaningless pursuits. "I have a college degree," I said quietly. "In what communications?" Emma scoffed. "That's not exactly a career path, Louise. At least helping with my baby would give your life some actual meaning." The room fell silent except for the sounds of Derek's video game. I looked around at these people who were supposed to love and support me, seeing clearly for the first time how little they valued my existence beyond what I could provide for them. "I need some time to think," I said, standing up from the table. "Don't take too long," Patricia called after me as I headed for the stairs. "Emma's going to need an answer soon so she can make proper arrangements." Alone in my room, I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, I called Aunt Margaret, my father's sister, hoping for some family support. But within 5 minutes of explaining the situation, she was lecturing me about family obligations and the importance of helping with new babies. "Your parents are getting older, Louise. They can't handle the stress of a newborn in the house. You're the logical choice to help out." It became clear that Emma had already launched a campaign painting herself as the struggling expectant mother and me as the selfish sister who refused to help family in need. The narrative had been crafted and distributed before I'd even been given the chance to respond to their original ultimatum. My neighbor, Mrs. Hendricks, knocked on my door around 9 that evening, her face creased with concern. "Honey, I couldn't help but overhear the raised voices earlier. Is everything all right?" Mrs. Hendricks had lived next door for 15 years and had watched me grow up. She'd always been kind, bringing over extra baked goods and checking on me when my parents were out of town. "Just family stuff," I said, not wanting to drag her into our drama. But she persisted with gentle questions, and eventually the whole story came pouring out. Mrs. Hendricks listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or making soft sounds of sympathy. "That doesn't sound like family helping family," she said when I finished. "That sounds like family taking advantage of family." Her validation meant more than I could express. At least one person in my life could see the situation clearly. The next morning, I discovered something that changed everything. While getting ready for work, I noticed an unfamiliar man carrying boxes down the basement stairs. Curious, I waited for my parents to leave for their morning errands, then investigated. The basement, which my parents had always claimed was too damp and cluttered for habitation, had been converted into a full apartment. There was a small kitchen, a bathroom with a shower, and a main living area with a separate bedroom. Fresh paint, new flooring, and modern fixtures made it clear this renovation had cost significant money. But most shocking of all, there was mail scattered on the kitchen counter, addressed to someone named Michael Torres at our address. Utility bills, credit card statements, and what looked like rent receipts. My parents had been renting out this space while telling me they struggled financially and needed my rental contributions to make ends meet. The betrayal felt like ice water in my veins. For 3 years, I'd been paying rent to help my supposedly struggling parents, while they'd been secretly collecting additional income from a basement tenant. They'd manipulated my sense of family responsibility to subsidize their lifestyle while lying about their financial situation. Standing in that basement apartment surrounded by evidence of their deception, I finally understood the full scope of their manipulation. This wasn't about family loyalty or helping with a new baby. This was about control, about keeping me dependent and exploitable. They'd been running a long con, and I'd been the perfect mark. I took pictures of everything with my phone, documenting the apartment and the mail before heading upstairs. The rage burning in my chest felt different now, cleaner somehow. It wasn't just anger about unfair treatment anymore. It was righteous indignation about systematic deception and financial fraud. My family wanted to treat me like property fine, but they were about to learn that this particular piece of property had developed some very inconvenient ideas about independence. My shift at the department store that weekend gave me time to think while folding endless piles of clothing. Every interaction with customers who treated me like an invisible servant reminded me of how my family saw my value. But unlike these strangers, my family was supposed to love and respect me. Monday morning, I used my break at the coffee shop to make some phone calls. First, I contacted the county clerk's office to request property records for my parents' house. The cheerful woman named Janet, who answered, explained I could access public records for a small fee. These documents will show ownership, history, mortgage information, and any rental registration if the property has been used for income, Janet explained. You can pick them up tomorrow afternoon. Next, I called the city's rental licensing department. If my parents were legally renting the basement apartment, they'd need permits and regular inspections. The woman who answered confirmed that our address had a registered rental unit that had been active for 3 years. The timeline matched perfectly with when I'd started paying rent upstairs. During my lunch break, I drove to the county courthouse and paid $15 for copies of the property records. Sitting in my car in the parking lot, I spread the documents across my passenger seat and felt my world shift again. Not only did the records confirm the legal basement rental, but they revealed something far more shocking. My parents had taken out a substantial second mortgage on the house 18 months ago. The loan amount was significant enough to cover major expenses like cars, vacations, or home improvements. Suddenly, Emma's new SUV and my parents' recent trip to Florida made perfect sense. They'd been living beyond their means, using borrowed money against the house's equity while crying poverty to justify exploiting my rent payments. I drove straight to the office of Mr. Williams, the tax preparer, whose name appeared on documents I'd photographed in the basement. His receptionist initially said he couldn't discuss other clients' information, but when I explained I was their daughter investigating financial abuse, he agreed to see me. I can't give you specific details, Mr. Williams said carefully, but I can confirm that your parents have reported rental income on their tax returns for the past 3 years. Significant rental income. The word significant hit me like a thunderbolt. My $500 monthly payments weren't their only rental income. They were collecting from both the basement tenant and from me while claiming financial hardship to justify their demands for free labor. Can you tell me if they've reported my rent payments as income? I asked. Mr. Williams consulted his computer screen, then nodded slowly. Yes, those payments have been properly reported as rental income. So they were legally obligated to declare my rent as income, which meant they'd been lying to me about our arrangement being informal family help. In the eyes of the law, I was a legitimate tenant with rights and protections. Armed with this information, I made one more stop before heading home. Carmen, our postal worker, had delivered mail to our house for 8 years and knew our family well. I waited for her at the end of our street and asked about mail delivery to the basement apartment. Oh, sure, Michael Torres gets regular delivery down there, Carmen confirmed. Nice guy, always tips well during the holidays. He's been there for years now. Do you know what he pays in rent? I asked casually. Carmen glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. He mentioned once that he pays $1,200 a month, but it's worth it because utilities are included and the location is perfect for his commute downtown. $1,200 a month from the basement tenant, $500 a month from me. That was $1,700 in monthly rental income plus whatever Emma contributed for groceries and household expenses. No wonder my parents could afford car payments, vacations, and home improvements while claiming they needed my financial help to survive. That evening, I sat in my bedroom doing calculations on my laptop. Between their regular jobs, the basement rental, and my rent payments, my parents were bringing in significantly more money than they'd claimed. They'd manufactured a financial crisis to justify exploiting me while actually living quite comfortably. But the most infuriating discovery came when I checked Emma's social media accounts. Photos from the past year showed expensive dinners, shopping trips, and weekend getaways with Derek. Her pregnancy announcement included pictures of an elaborate gender reveal party that must have cost hundreds of dollars. Meanwhile, I'd been skipping meals to afford gas money and wearing secondhand clothes to stretch my budget. Derek's employment history became clear when I looked at his LinkedIn profile. He'd quit his last job at his father's construction company after 6 months, claiming the work environment was toxic. Since then, he'd been living off savings, unemployment benefits, and apparently Emma's financial support. The guy who'd dismissed my career goals as unimportant hadn't held a steady job in over a year. But the final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. While reviewing my bank statements to document my rent payments, I noticed something strange. My monthly transfers to my parents' account had been automatically categorized as rental payment by my banking app's tracking system. This meant there was a clear digital trail proving I'd been paying rent, not making informal contributions to family expenses. If this situation ever escalated to legal action, I had documentation proving my tenant status and rights. Sitting on my bed, surrounded by printed documents, bank statements, and property records, I finally saw the complete picture. My parents had orchestrated an elaborate financial manipulation scheme using my sense of family loyalty and my precarious economic situation to extract money while providing false information about their circumstances. The baby ultimatum wasn't about childcare needs or family support. It was about maintaining control over their most reliable income source, me. If I moved out, they'd lose $6,000 annually in rent payments, plus the convenience of having someone to blame for their financial decisions. But what they didn't realize was that their manipulation had taught me something valuable about documenting evidence and understanding my legal rights. If they wanted to play hardball with financial threats, I was now prepared to respond with knowledge instead of emotion. The question was no longer whether I'd agree to their terms. The question was how to use this information to expose their deception and escape their control completely. The next morning, I woke up with absolute clarity about my next steps. While my family slept off their evening of celebrating Emma's latest ultrasound appointment, I quietly got dressed and drove to the other side of town to look at apartments. Mr. Peterson, the landlord who'd advertised a one-bedroom unit for $750 monthly, met me at the property with a warm smile. The apartment was small but clean with its own parking space and laundry hookups. Most importantly, it was 15 miles away from my family's manipulation. "You seem like a responsible tenant," Mr. Peterson said after reviewing my employment history and references. "The previous renter lived here for 4 years without any issues. I prefer long-term tenants who treat the place like home." I explained my situation, carefully emphasizing my stable employment and clean rental history. Mr. Peterson seemed impressed by my thorough preparation and clear financial planning. "I can offer you a 6-month lease with an option to extend," he said. "First month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit equal to 1 month's rent. That's $22.50 total to move in." The amount represented most of my savings, but I'd calculated the costs beforehand. My combined income from both jobs would easily cover the rent, utilities, and living expenses, especially without my family's constant demands for additional contributions. "I'll take it," I said without hesitation. We signed the paperwork that afternoon, and I scheduled my move-in date for the following Saturday. Mr. Peterson gave me keys and a welcome packet with information about garbage pickup emergency contacts and local services. Driving home with the keys in my pocket felt like carrying a secret weapon. The next challenge was finding additional income to replace the benefits of living at home. Lisa, a manager at the bank branch near my coffee shop job, had mentioned they were hiring part-time customer service representatives for evening hours. The position is perfect for someone with your communication skills, Lisa explained during my interview Wednesday afternoon. 4 evenings per week, 6 to 10, handling phone inquiries and processing account updates. The pay is competitive, and we offer benefits for part-time employees. The job would add another $800 to my monthly income while fitting perfectly around my existing work schedule. I accepted the position immediately with a start date, the following Monday. But the most eye-opening discovery came from an unexpected conversation with my cousin Jake during a random phone call Thursday evening. "I heard Emma's been telling everyone you're being difficult about helping with the baby," Jake said, without preamble. "She called my mom yesterday crying about how selfish you've become." My stomach dropped. What exactly did she say? "According to Emma, you demanded payment for babysitting your own nephew or niece. She made it sound like you wanted to charge premium rates for basic family help." The distortion of facts was breathtaking. Emma had turned my reasonable request for fair compensation into a story about greed and family betrayal. She'd painted herself as the victim of an uncaring sister, rather than acknowledging the unrealistic nature of their demands. "Jake, that's not what happened," I said, then explained the real situation, the ultimatum about tripled rent, the expectation of full-time unpaid childcare, and the lies about their financial situation. "Wait, what?" Jake's voice changed completely. "They threatened to triple your rent, Louise. That's not legal if you're an established tenant. They can't just arbitrarily change rental terms to force compliance with unrelated demands." Jake worked as a paralegal for a law firm that handled housing disputes. His perspective on tenant rights opened up possibilities I hadn't considered. "You should document everything," he advised. "Dates, conversations, financial records, anything that proves the pattern of manipulation. If they try to illegally evict you or retaliate for refusing their demands, you'll need evidence." The irony was perfect. My family's manipulation had accidentally taught me about legal protections I could use against them if necessary. That night, I started a detailed log of events, conversations, and discoveries. Every lie about their finances, every attempt at emotional manipulation, every threat disguised as family concern. The pattern of behavior became undeniable when written out chronologically. But the most disturbing revelation came Friday morning when I overheard my parents discussing backup plans for my resistance. I'd woken up early for my coffee shop shift and was getting dressed when familiar voices drifted up from the kitchen. My parents were having coffee before their usual morning routines, apparently assuming I'd already left for work. "If Louise keeps being stubborn about this, we have options," Robert was saying in a low voice. "What kind of options?" Patricia asked. "Well, the car is still in our name. We could report it as unauthorized use if she tries to move out without agreeing to help Emma." My blood ran cold. The car I'd been driving for 2 years, making payments on insurance and maintenance, was technically still titled in my father's name. I'd never thought to transfer ownership because I'd trusted them. "That seems extreme," Patricia said, but her tone suggested she was considering the idea. "There's also her phone plan. We could cancel that claim she's been mentally unstable lately. Emma could back us up about Louise's erratic behavior and selfish demands." The casual discussion of destroying my transportation and communication access felt like being punched in the stomach. These people were planning to sabotage my basic independence rather than accept my right to make my own choices. "What about her bank account?" Patricia asked. "I think we removed ourselves from that when she turned 25, Robert admitted. "But we could talk to Emma about expressing concerns to Louise's employers. plant some seeds about family problems affecting her reliability. They were discussing a coordinated campaign to destroy my life if I didn't submit to their demands. Not just financial pressure, but character assassination designed to isolate me from support systems and income sources. I listened in growing horror as they planned various forms of retaliation, each more vindictive than the last. The parents I'd loved and trusted were discussing strategies to harm me with the same casualness other people use to plan grocery shopping. But instead of breaking down, I felt something crystallize inside me. The last vestiges of guilt about abandoning family melted away, replaced by determination to escape before they could implement any of their threats. I had exactly 8 days to transfer car ownership switch to my own phone plan, secure my bank accounts, and move my belongings without detection. 8 days to disappear before they realized their primary source of control and income was gone forever. The planning phase was over. It was time for action. Saturday morning, I told my family I needed to run errands and would be gone most of the day. The casual announcement barely registered with them, since I often spent weekends taking care of personal business while they relaxed at home. My first stop was the Department of Motor Vehicles, where I'd researched the process for transferring car ownership from family members. Armed with the title, registration, and a bill of sale I'd prepared showing my father selling me the car for $1, I waited in line for 3 hours to complete the paperwork. "This looks straightforward," the clerk said, processing the documents. "Your father will need to sign the title transfer, but everything else is in order." The bill of sale was my insurance policy. If my parents tried to report the car as stolen, I'd have legal documentation proving ownership transfer. All I needed was Robert's signature, which I planned to obtain through careful deception. Next, I visited the phone store to establish my own account. The process required a credit check and activation fee, but the representative assured me I could keep my current number when transferring service. "You'll get a new SIM card and the transfer should complete within 24 hours, she explained. "Your old account will automatically cancel once the number transfers to your new plan." The timing would be perfect for my Saturday departure. By the time my family realized I'd left, their ability to contact me directly would be eliminated. My final Saturday task involved opening a second bank account at a different institution. The new account would remain secret until after my departure, giving me secure access to funds if my family attempted financial retaliation. Sunday. I began the delicate process of moving personal belongings without arousing suspicion. Under the guise of spring cleaning, I started sorting through clothes and personal items, ostensibly deciding what to donate to charity. "Finally decluttering your room," Emma commented approvingly when she saw the garbage bags I was carrying downstairs. "Maybe you'll have more space for baby supplies soon." The assumption that my bedroom would become a nursery storage area reinforced my decision to escape. Emma had already started planning how to use my living space for her convenience. "Just getting organized," I replied neutrally, loading the bags into my car trunk. Instead of driving to the donation center, I delivered everything to my new apartment, gradually moving belongings without detection. Tony, a college student I'd hired to help with furniture, moving, met me at the apartment Sunday afternoon to assess the major items I'd need transported later. "Most of this stuff can fit in a standard pickup truck," Tony said, examining my bedframe dresser and desk. "When do you want to schedule the move?" "Next Saturday morning around 9, I told him. "It needs to be quick and efficient. Everything loaded and transported within 2 hours. Tony nodded confidently. "No problem. I've done this type of move before. Just have everything boxed and ready to go." The logistics were falling into place perfectly. Monday evening, I attended my first session with Dr. Anderson, a therapist whose office was located near my new apartment. I'd decided that professional guidance would help me process the emotional complexity of cutting ties with manipulative family members. What you're describing sounds like financial abuse combined with emotional manipulation, Dr. Anderson said after I explained the situation. The threats about rent increases and the demands for unpaid labor are classic control tactics. Her validation meant everything. Having a professional confirm that my family's behavior constituted abuse helped solidify my resolve. It's normal to feel guilty about protecting yourself from family members, Dr. Anderson continued, but maintaining relationships that harm your well-being serves no one's long-term interests. We discussed strategies for managing guilt-setting boundaries and building supportive relationships outside of family connections. Dr. Anderson emphasized that walking away from toxic dynamics was often the healthiest choice for everyone involved. Sometimes people need to experience the natural consequences of their behavior before they're motivated to change, she explained. Your family may never understand your perspective, but that doesn't make your decision wrong. Tuesday brought an unexpected challenge when I discovered my parents had been monitoring my bank account activity. While reviewing my statements online, I noticed that someone had logged into my account from a different device multiple times over the past month. A call to customer service revealed that my parents still had access credentials from when they'd helped me set up the account years ago. Their monitoring explained how they'd known about my financial struggles and savings balance. I need to remove all other users from this account immediately, I told the representative. We can do that right away, she assured me. We'll also issue you new login credentials and a replacement debit card for security. The invasion of privacy felt like another violation, but it also explained how my family had staying one step ahead of my financial planning. They'd been tracking my spending and income using that information to calibrate their pressure tactics. Wednesday evening. I made my most difficult preparation writing the letter I'd leave behind to explain my departure. The document needed to be comprehensive enough to prevent them from claiming ignorance about my motivations while remaining focused on facts rather than emotions. I started with a timeline of events beginning with their ultimatum about becoming an unpaid nanny and progressing through my discoveries about their financial deception. Each claim was supported by specific evidence and documentation. The letter included copies of property records proving their basement rental income bank statements, showing my consistent rent payments, and quotes from professional nannies, demonstrating fair market rates for childcare services. Most importantly, I documented their threats about the car phone service and character assassination. Having their retaliation plans in writing would protect me if they attempted to follow through on any of those threats. This letter serves as formal notice that I am terminating my tenancy and removing myself from all family arrangements. I wrote in conclusion, the pattern of financial deception, emotional manipulation, and threatened retaliation has made continued residence impossible. The tone remained factual and professional, focusing on behaviors rather than making personal attacks. Dr. Anderson had emphasized that maintaining dignity during confrontations was crucial for long-term emotional health. Thursday brought my final preparation task, securing my father's signature on the car title transfer. I approached him after dinner with the paperwork and a carefully crafted explanation. Dad, I want to get the car title transferred into my name for insurance purposes, I said casually. My agent said it might lower my rates if I'm listed as the primary owner. Robert barely glanced at the documents before signing. Makes sense. You've been making the insurance payments anyway. The casual signature completed my legal ownership of the only major asset that could be used against me. By Friday evening, every aspect of my escape plan was confirmed and ready for execution. My new job at the bank would start Monday, giving me a seamless transition into financial independence. My apartment was partially furnished and ready for occupancy. All my legal documents were secured, my valuables were already relocated, and my communication systems would be independent within hours of departure. Most importantly, I documented everything thoroughly enough to protect myself from retaliation while providing clear explanations for my choice to leave. Friday night. I lay in my childhood bedroom for the last time, listening to Derek's television shows and feeling nothing but relief about never hearing those sounds again. Tomorrow morning, I would walk away from 28 years of family manipulation and start building an authentic life based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. The scared, guilt-ridden person who'd sat through their ultimatum a week ago no longer existed. In her place was someone who understood her value and refused to accept less than basic human dignity. My family had taught me well, just not in the way they'd intended. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel like a fresh beginning. I woke up at 5:32 hours before anyone else would stir and quietly gathered the last of my essentials into a single backpack. The letter I'd written explaining my departure sat on my pillow, sealed in an envelope, addressed simply to family. Inside, along with my detailed explanation and evidence of their deception, I'd included my key to the house and a formal 30-day notice terminating my tenancy as required by state law. By 6:15, I was loading final items into my car while the neighborhood remained peacefully quiet. Tony arrived promptly at 6:30 with his pickup truck, and we executed the furniture removal with military precision. "This is some serious ninja moving," Tony whispered as we carried my mattress down the stairs. "Your family doesn't know you're leaving." "They'll figure it out soon enough," I replied, focused on the task at hand. Within 90 minutes, every piece of furniture and remaining personal belonging had been loaded and transported to my apartment. Tony helped me arrange everything in the small space, transforming it from empty rooms into a functional home. "Congratulations on your independence," he said as I handed him payment for the move. "Whatever situation you're escaping, you handled it like a pro." By 8:45, I was standing in my own living room, surrounded by my possessions, in my own space, holding my own keys. The feeling of freedom was so overwhelming, I had to sit down on my secondhand couch and process the magnitude of what I'd accomplished. At exactly 9 o'clock, I activated my new phone service and watched my old number transfer to the device I controlled completely. The last thread connecting me to my family's communication system was severed. Meanwhile, 15 miles away, my family was probably just waking up to what they thought was a normal Saturday morning. Emma and Derek would sleep until 10 or 11, then expect someone else to make breakfast. My parents would assume I was at work since I often picked up weekend shifts at the coffee shop. It would be hours before anyone thought to check my empty bedroom. I spent Saturday afternoon shopping for groceries and basic household supplies, marveling at the simple pleasure of buying whatever I wanted without justifying expenses to anyone. The freedom to choose my own food, my own schedule, and my own priorities felt intoxicating. Ms. Rodriguez, my new supervisor at the bank, called Saturday evening to confirm my Monday start date and discuss training schedules. Her professional enthusiasm stood in stark contrast to my family's dismissive attitude toward my career goals. "We're excited to have you on the team," she said warmly. "Your background in customer service and retail management makes you perfect for this position." Someone saw value in my skills and experience. Someone was paying me fairly for my time and treating me with basic professional respect. The contrast with my family's exploitation couldn't have been sharper. Sunday morning brought my first test of resolve when I ignored 17 missed calls from various family members. My phone had been buzzing constantly since Saturday evening, when they'd apparently discovered my absence. The voicemails painted a predictable progression of emotions. First confusion, then anger, then attempted guilt manipulation, and finally desperate bargaining. Louise, we need to talk about this misunderstanding. Patricia's voice was tight with controlled fury. Come home immediately so we can discuss this like adults. This is completely unacceptable behavior, Robert added in a separate message. Your family needs to know where you are and what you think you're accomplishing with this stunt. Emma's messages were pure emotional manipulation. I'm pregnant and stressed, and you're making everything worse by disappearing. How could you abandon your sister when I need family support? But Derek's voicemail revealed their true priorities. Look, Louise, if this is about money, we can negotiate something. Emma really needs reliable childcare, and your parents are counting on your rent contribution. The admission that they were counting on my rent payments contradicted every claim about my arrangement being temporary family help. Derek had accidentally confirmed that I was seen as a permanent income source rather than a daughter with independent value. By Sunday evening, the calls had escalated to other family members. Aunt Margaret left increasingly frantic messages about family loyalty and the importance of communication. Cousins I hadn't heard from in months suddenly expressed concern about my well-being. The coordinated campaign proved that Emma had successfully mobilized extended family to pressure me into returning. But having anticipated this response, I remained unmoved by appeals to family unity from relatives who'd never shown interest in my actual happiness or well-being. Monday morning brought my first day at the bank and the satisfying routine of a normal work environment. My colleagues treated me professionally, my supervisor provided clear expectations, and my responsibilities were clearly defined with fair compensation. During my lunch break, I received a text message from an unknown number that made my blood run cold. This is Emma. Derek drove by your old job and the coffee shop manager said you still work there, but weren't scheduled today. We know you're getting these messages. Come home before this gets worse. The implicit threat was unmistakable. They were actively tracking my movements and escalating their search efforts. The phrase, "before this gets worse," suggested they were planning additional retaliation beyond phone calls and family pressure. But I'd anticipated this escalation. My careful preparation had included providing both my employers with a brief explanation about family harassment, ensuring they understood not to share my schedule or contact information with anyone claiming to be relatives. I'm dealing with some family boundary issues, I'd explained to my coffee shop manager. If anyone comes by asking about my schedule or personal information, please don't provide details. I'll keep you updated about my availability. Both employers had been understanding and supportive, recognizing the situation as a safety concern rather than drama. Tuesday brought the most disturbing development yet. Emma called my new bank directly, claiming to be concerned about my mental health and asking to speak with my supervisor about my employment. Fortunately, Ms. Rodriguez handled the call professionally and contacted me immediately. Someone claiming to be your sister called expressing concerns about your mental state and job performance, Ms. Rodriguez explained. I told her we don't discuss employee information with third parties, but wanted you to be aware of the contact. The attempt to sabotage my new employment confirmed everything I'd overheard about their retaliation plans. Emma was actively trying to destroy my professional reputation to force my return. Is this related to a domestic situation? Ms. Rodriguez asked carefully. Yes, it's a family member trying to maintain control through harassment, I confirmed. I've documented everything and have legal protections in place. Ms. Rodriguez nodded understandingly. We see this occasionally with employees escaping difficult family situations. Your job performance is excellent, and we don't appreciate external attempts to interfere with our workplace. The professional support felt like armor against my family's attacks. Wednesday brought the news I'd been expecting. My parents had filed a missing person report claiming I'd disappeared under suspicious circumstances. But the police officer who contacted me seemed skeptical of their claims. Your family says you left without explanation, and they're concerned about your safety," Officer Martinez explained during our phone conversation. "But you're obviously fine and in contact. This seems more like a family dispute than a missing person case." I explained the situation, briefly emphasizing that I was an adult who'd chosen to leave a difficult family situation and had provided written notice of my departure. "Do you feel safe where you are now?" Officer Martinez asked. "Absolutely. I feel safer than I have in years." "Then this isn't a police matter. Family disagreements aren't criminal issues unless there are threats or harassment." The official confirmation that my family's missing person report was inappropriate gave me additional protection against future manipulation attempts. By Thursday, the calls and messages had finally stopped. The sudden silence felt ominous rather than peaceful, suggesting they were regrouping for a different approach. I used the quiet to reflect on everything that had happened. 1 week ago, I'd been trapped in a cycle of exploitation and manipulation, convinced that family loyalty required accepting abuse. Now I was living independently, working at a job where my contributions were valued, and building authentic relationships based on mutual respect. The transformation hadn't required dramatic confrontation or elaborate revenge schemes. I'd simply removed myself from a toxic situation and allowed the natural consequences of their behavior to unfold without my participation. My family was experiencing the reality of life without their designated problem solver and financial contributor. No more reliable rent payments, no more free labor for household tasks, no more scapegoat to blame for their poor financial decisions. Most importantly, they were facing the prospect of actually parenting Emma's baby without unpaid help from an exploited family member. Friday morning brought one final message, this time from Emma herself. "Louise, I went into early labor last night. The baby is fine, but Derek freaked out and couldn't handle the hospital visit. Mom and Dad are overwhelmed trying to help with everything. Maybe we should talk." The message was clearly designed to trigger guilt and concern, painting Emma as struggling and the family as overwhelmed without my presence. But the subtext was even more revealing. Derek, the man who'd dismissed childcare as just babysitting, had panicked during his first real parenting challenge. They were experiencing exactly what I'd predicted: the harsh reality that raising children requires actual effort, responsibility, and sacrifice from the parents themselves. Instead of responding with sympathy or guilt, I felt profound relief that I wasn't caught in the middle of their crisis. Emma's early labor was stressful, but it was also confirmation that I'd escaped just in time to avoid being conscripted into emergency childcare duty. The timing of my departure had been perfect. My family's backup plans for controlling me had been neutralized by my thorough preparation. Their attempts at retaliation had been anticipated and defended against. Most importantly, their crisis was happening without me proving that they were capable of handling their own responsibilities when forced to do so. I was free, and they were learning to cope with the consequences of their choices without a convenient scapegoat to exploit. 3 months later, I was thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. My small apartment had transformed into a genuine home, decorated with items I'd chosen and paid for myself. The freedom to make decisions about my living space, my schedule, and my future felt like emerging from a dark tunnel into bright sunlight. My position at the bank had exceeded all expectations. Ms. Rodriguez had recommended me for additional training in financial planning services, recognizing my natural ability to help customers understand complex financial products. The recommendation came with a promotion to senior customer service representative and a significant salary increase. Louise has exceptional skills in helping people navigate difficult financial situations, Ms. Rodriguez wrote in my performance review. She combines empathy with practical knowledge in ways that make her invaluable to our team. The irony wasn't lost on me that my experience being financially manipulated had actually enhanced my ability to help others protect their financial well-being. My social life had blossomed in unexpected ways. Mrs. Franklin, my neighbor in the apartment complex, had introduced me to her book club, which met monthly at the local library. The women ranged in age from 30 to 70, and their discussions about literature often evolved into deeper conversations about life experiences and personal growth. "You have such insight into family dynamics," commented Jennifer, a divorced mother of two, who'd become my closest friend in the group. "It's like you understand how complicated relationships can be without being bitter about it." Jennifer's observation touched on something I'd been processing with Dr. Anderson during our weekly sessions. The anger and hurt from my family's manipulation had gradually transformed into something more useful wisdom about recognizing and avoiding toxic relationship patterns. "Healthy people don't threaten or manipulate to get what they want," Dr. Anderson had explained during one of our sessions. "Your family's behavior taught you to identify these red flags early in other relationships." My dating life reflected this new understanding. Marcus, a teacher I'd met at the bank during a school fundraising event, approached relationships with the kind of respect and communication I'd never experienced. When he wanted to spend time together, he asked directly. When conflicts arose, he discussed them honestly without threats or manipulation. "I appreciate how straightforward you are," Marcus told me over dinner one evening. "So many people play games or expect you to guess what they're thinking." The contrast with my family's communication style was striking. Marcus treated my time, opinions, and autonomy as valuable, never assuming he had the right to make decisions for me or pressure me into arrangements that didn't serve my interests. My relationship with work had also evolved beyond simple employment into genuine career development. The bank's management had begun discussing opportunities for me to pursue additional education in financial planning, with company support for relevant certifications. "We see real potential for advancement," the district manager explained during my quarterly review. "Your combination of customer service skills and analytical thinking makes you ideal for our management development program." The validation of my professional potential stood in sharp contrast to my family's dismissive attitude toward my career goals. People who barely knew me had recognized abilities that my own relatives had ignored or undermined. But the most satisfying development was the gradual understanding of how my departure had affected my family's situation. Through careful observation of public records and occasional updates from Aunt Margaret, I'd pieced together the consequences of their manipulation. Without my monthly rent contributions, my parents had struggled to meet their mortgage payments, especially the second mortgage they'd taken out to fund their lifestyle upgrades. They'd been forced to sell Emma's SUV and significantly reduce their spending on entertainment and travel. The basement tenant, Michael Torres, had moved out 6 weeks after my departure, citing family drama and too much chaos upstairs as reasons for finding alternative housing. Losing his $1,200 monthly payments had created additional financial pressure. Emma and Derek's adjustment to parenthood had proven more challenging than their casual assumptions suggested. Derek's panic during the early labor incident had been followed by several more crisis situations where his inability to handle stress became problematic. "Derek's been struggling with the responsibility," Aunt Margaret admitted during one of our brief phone conversations. "Emma's exhausted because he can't seem to manage basic baby care tasks without getting overwhelmed." The reality check had been exactly what they'd needed, though they were learning these lessons the hard way. Most telling was the gradual shift in family dynamics as relatives began questioning the narrative Emma had constructed about my abandonment. Cousin Jake had spoken with other family members about the true circumstances of my departure, sharing what he'd learned about the financial manipulation and ultimatum. "People are starting to understand that you didn't just disappear for no reason," Jake told me during a coffee meeting. The missing person report made some relatives suspicious about what really happened. The truth had a way of emerging despite efforts to control the narrative. 6 months after my departure, Emma reached out with a message that was strikingly different from her previous communications. Instead of anger or manipulation, her text carried genuine humility. Louise, I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. Being a parent is so much harder than I expected, and I'm starting to understand why you said our arrangement wasn't fair. Derek and I have been going to counseling to work on our communication and parenting skills. I'm not asking you to come back or help with anything. I just wanted you to know that I realize now how wrong we were to try to force you into unpaid childcare. You deserve to have your own life and goals. If you're ever open to talking, I'd like to apologize properly. The message represented the kind of growth and self-reflection that only came from experiencing real consequences. Emma had learned about parenting challenges not through lectures or warnings, but through direct experience with the responsibilities she'd tried to delegate to me. I responded carefully, acknowledging her apology, while maintaining clear boundaries about future contact. I appreciate you reaching out and sharing your perspective. Parenting is definitely challenging, and I hope counseling helps you and Derek develop the skills you need. I'm doing well in my new life and have found a lot of satisfaction in my independence. I'm open to occasional communication if it's respectful and doesn't involve requests for assistance or financial support. The exchange felt like closure on a painful chapter while leaving room for potential future relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. My parents' response to the changing family dynamics was predictably slower to evolve. They'd apparently doubled down on their victim narrative, claiming I'd abandoned family during a crisis and refusing to acknowledge their role in creating the situation. But their financial struggles had forced some practical admissions. They'd had to take in another basement tenant to replace Michael's rent payments, and they'd approached several relatives about temporary financial assistance to cover household expenses. The pattern of financial manipulation was becoming visible to other family members who began setting their own boundaries about monetary assistance. Your parents asked to borrow $3,000 last month, Aunt Margaret mentioned during one of our conversations. When I asked for details about their expenses, they became evasive and defensive. It made me think about what you'd said about their financial situation. My departure had inadvertently protected other family members from becoming targets of the same manipulation tactics. 1 year after leaving, I received the most meaningful validation of my decision. Sophie, the teenage daughter of my neighbor, Mrs. Franklin, had been struggling with her own family boundary issues. Her parents expected her to sacrifice her college plans to stay home and care for a special needs sibling using similar guilt tactics and financial pressure to the ones my family had employed. Watching how you handled your family situation gave me courage to stand up for my education goals, Sophie told me. You showed me that you can love your family while still protecting your own future. Sophie had successfully negotiated a compromise with her parents that allowed her to attend college while contributing to her siblings' care during school breaks. The difference was that her parents had agreed to pay for professional assistance and hadn't demanded unpaid full-time labor. The key was approaching it as a problem-solving conversation instead of accepting their first demand, Sophie explained. When I presented alternatives and insisted on fair arrangements, they were willing to work with me. Sophie's success demonstrated that my choice to leave hadn't been the only option for dealing with family manipulation, but it had been the right choice for my specific situation. Sometimes walking away forces necessary conversations and changes that wouldn't happen otherwise. As I sat in my living room on the anniversary of my departure, surrounded by evidence of the life I'd built through my own efforts, I felt profound gratitude for the courage to prioritize my well-being over family expectations. The decision to leave had been painful, but it had also been transformative in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I'd learned to recognize my own value, to build relationships based on mutual respect, and to trust my judgment about what constituted healthy boundaries. Most importantly, I'd discovered that walking away from toxicity created space for authentic connections and opportunities that aligned with my actual goals and values. My family had taught me about manipulation, exploitation, and control, but my independence had taught me about self-respect, genuine relationships, and the possibility of building a life based on choice rather than obligation. The woman who'd sat through their ultimatum 18 months ago had been operating from fear and guilt. The woman reflecting on that experience now was operating from strength and clarity about her worth. That transformation alone made every difficult moment of the journey worthwhile. The life lesson that emerged from this experience was both simple and profound. You cannot build authentic relationships with people who view you as property to be used rather than a person to be respected. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved is to walk away and allow natural consequences to teach the lessons that words cannot convey. Family loyalty should enhance your well-being, not destroy it. When supposed love comes with threats, manipulation, and demands for self-sacrifice, it isn't love at all. Real love supports your growth, respects your boundaries, and celebrates your independence. I'd learned that I deserved relationships where my value was recognized, my goals were supported, and my choices were respected. Anything less than that wasn't worth preserving, regardless of blood relations or shared history. The greatest gift I'd given myself was the courage to believe I deserved better treatment and the determination to create circumstances where better treatment was possible. My story wasn't about revenge or proving points to people who'd wronged me. It was about choosing self-respect over self-sacrifice and discovering that authentic happiness required authentic relationships built on foundations of mutual respect rather than obligation and control. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family expectations conflicted with your personal well-being and goals? How do you balance loyalty to loved ones with the need to protect your own future and independence? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of your own challenges with family boundaries, please consider liking this video to help others who might be facing similar situations find these perspectives. Subscribing to the channel ensures you'll receive notifications about new stories and discussions about navigating complex family dynamics and personal growth. Sharing this story with friends or family members who might benefit from hearing about healthy boundary setting and the importance of mutual respect in relationships would mean so much to me. Sometimes people need to hear that prioritizing their well-being isn't selfish, but necessary for building authentic, loving relationships. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting content that explores the complexities of family relationships and personal growth. I hope my experience offers encouragement to anyone struggling with similar choices about family loyalty and personal independence. Remember that you deserve relationships that enhance your life rather than diminish it, and that choosing self-respect is never selfish when done with integrity and thoughtfulness. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.